Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe Samaniego here, along with Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone, and we have Joshua Burch from Joshua Burch Motorsports. A big thank you to all our Patreon subscribers, Colin, the show, Mark, and Robin for keeping us on the air, and of course, Ethan as well
Two
by
laps.
subscribing into the by subscribing to the Grid Network Patreon or buy me a coffee. So we definitely encourage everyone to check that out. And of course, one of the big things is participate in the chat room. I already see Amber and quite a few others participating in the chat room. Time to get started with this. Mexico City E-Prix returns after the pandemic was pretty much we had no Mexico City E-Prix. Last year, Puebla hosted the race in the traditional spot, and this year is back in Atrodome Hermanos Rodriguez, located in Mexico City, the only purpose-built racetrack that hosts Formula E regularly. Edward, starting with you, why does this track work and put on some memorable races?
Well, Joe, I'm very glad you asked me that. The thing that makes Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez work really well, obviously, Formula One uses it as well, but they use obviously the full layout. The layout the Formula E uses sort of cuts off to the right a bit earlier, and I think Josh is busy editing the qualifying show in the background, so apologies for that. Like if my voice ends up in there as well, but Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, obviously, it's been changed a bit over the years. If you remember, in the very second season, when it was first used, it had a very different layout to the one we see now, with a few more chicanes, a few more little barriers, and even the Peraltada, the final corner, had a little chicane in the middle of it, where, if you remember, Nelson Piquet Jr. had a horrible crash with John-Eric Verne, which is signaled kind of the end of Piquet Jr.'s career, sadly. But it has always produced exciting races, and I think they've changed it to keep up with the advancement of the Gen 2 cars, and hopefully the Gen 3 cars will also suit this track quite well. And it's also a lovely place for the race in terms of the atmosphere in the stadium. The fans are fanatical, as you'd hope they would be. Even when there hasn't been a Mexican driver, they've been really enthusiastic and celebrated like crazy whenever there's anything close, and that tends to be the case in Formula E. So it's a case of the layout has always suited the cars. It's changed to keep up with the cars. It's a lovely country, a lovely place to have the race, and we've just happened to be lucky enough to see some excellent drives over the years from brilliant drivers, the likes of Lucas Di Grassi, Pascal Wehrlein, Sebastian Buemi, etc. Have all put on brilliant. Oliver Turvey as well, I remember, has always gone well at Mexico. So all of those have put on excellent performances and have been found to be closely matched. And let's hope today we see another great contest in Mexico.
I'm so glad you're on this show, Ed, at the moment, because I know I can always rely on you to talk a bit longer than I need. Yeah, sorry, I'm editing the pre-race show, which is cutting down the qualifying that me and Ed had just commentated on. I throw it back to Amber's comment as well that this new qualifying format works so well. And I'll add in as well, it's made Mexico even more fun. We just had a great session as well, where we saw Mortara versus Wehrlein. Mortara top in the championship, Wehrlein on the second page of the championship as well. And it's just a whole wash of what's going to happen next. You don't know. Wehrlein's got pole position. Mortara's second. Nick De Vries, who is second in the championship, only 4 points back. He starts down in sixth position as well. It's fantastic. And this is a circuit which lends itself to great Formula E races. As Ed was saying as well, we've raced here since season 2. Yes, we didn't have a race here last season, but this modified circuit, I said to Ed a couple of days ago, when we were talking about this weekend, I don't really like that it's sort of taken away the smoothness of it all, but I do like that there's no chicanes now. It's full flat out, and I can live with this little hairpin at the bottom, as you just saw on the graphic. It kind of does, however, look like a butcher's knife, but we get great racing, and I'm hoping here today we're going to have an even better race than we've ever had. Energy management is going to be key. We've got this factor of added time as well if we get a safety car. And around this circuit, we know energy management is key. Remember Wehrlein running out of energy just before the line and De Grassi taking the win. The two Nissans as well had that problem. So I think we're in for a very interesting race here today.
A very interesting race, and we do have Adam in the chat room. Hi to Joshua and Edward. He'll be watching the watch along. Be sure to check out the watch along on Joshua Burch's channel during the race. And I have to agree, this track I think is going to be something else to flat out. Very interesting observation about the shape of the track, and I think this is just going to be a lot of fun, and especially with no chicanes this year, I think it's just something where the no chicane part is going to make a bigger challenge for energy management because Pascal Wehrlein, we all know him for the memorable finish with Lucas Di Grassi. Had the last lead exiting the last corner, lost the lead right there at the finish line. And then, of course, ran out of energy, so it went from worse to even worse. But now, this year, we're seeing this track some already potential troublesome areas. Throughout free practice 1 and 2 and qualifying, several drivers locked it up entering that first corner. Now, many were saying this is due to either the bumps or that first corner and the car balance. But thankfully, there is plenty of runoff room in there. As we've seen most drivers, they go into runoff area, spin the car around, get back on the track with no issue. However, lap 1, turn 1, that could be the big problem we see right there. So one of the big things, Ed, starting with you, when it comes to lap 1, turn 1, do you see this corner being a troublesome area?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if somebody ends up in the wall. Last time we raced here, Nico Muller in the Dragon ended up coming a cropper, and after having a great qualifying actually in season 6. And it's unfortunate we don't have Nico Muller on the grid. I think he's one of the more underrated drivers that's been in Formula E. But we do still have we have Giovinazzi in that Dragon seat instead, and I imagine he will be looking to impress after what was, I thought, a really solid qualifying by him, considering the Dragon that he's in. I certainly think they've reprofiled that first corner a little bit in terms of where the barrier is and some of the curbing. Obviously, we saw lots of dust and grass being kicked up on the exit. There's that little bit that just sticks out on near the exit wall, and the drivers are really trying to push it. Lotterer especially was pushing it a lot in some of his semi-finals to try and get as close as he could without hitting it. And I'd certainly think it's a matter of no matter, just the thing whenever you change these sorts of really tight 45-degree, 90-degree sort of corners, especially when it's the first corner leading on from a straight, you always find they can reprofile it, but the drivers will always be pushing to get that little bit more exit speed to set themselves up for the rest of the lap. It's not just in qualifying, but also in the race when they're trying to set up overtaking moves. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some drama. Might not be in the very first corner of lap 1, but tends to be in wheel-to-wheel battles a bit later in the race. So not just the first corner, but also that little fiddly hairpin that Josh was talking about. They didn't like. We saw Mortara having a little. He had his lap time to lead, and then he in practice too, and then he got a wheel on the grass and had to just about save it, and was saved very much by the runoff being there. So it's more forgiving than the usual Formula E track. Certainly, that turn 1 tightens up a fair bit.
Yeah, turn 1 is going to be very, very key. We've seen, as you say, Ed, several drivers so far this weekend have just gone straight on. Practice 1 was literally like who could break the latest. It was like they all had a little bet on going with each other to see the latest you could make the apex for turn 1. Di Grassi went off, Mortara went off, Sette Camera went off, Giovinazzi, just to name a few. They all had a trip down there towards the F1 layout. I really think we're going to have a situation where we're going to be a few laps into the race and someone will lock a brake and go spinning down there. We saw that back in season 3. Amber says, is the back of the field more at risk for a crash? Yes, I'd say they are, because they're all going to concertina up into that first corner. It's a very short run to turn 1 because it's on the oval part of the circuit that they largely use. I say oval, it's flat. It's just in a circle. But it's a very, very hard braking zone. The pit wall extends out. It's designed that way so that they can regen energy as much as they can, so it's not sweeping through. Remember Valencia, that problem. So I think we're going to see a lot of cars down at turn 1 in the runoff area. Maybe not lap 1, but maybe laps 3 or 4 into the race. I certainly think as well, from what we've seen with Eduardo Mortara just gone now in qualifying, that the pedal Tarda is going to be very tricky. I mean, Ed, you were with me in the comms box. I'm sure you were seeing as well that the cars were sliding around that last corner so much. I mean, Verne nearly lost it. Mortara did lose it as well. He had 3 attempts at losing it before going across the line. So that last corner for the pedal Tarda and turn 1, that's the big key. that we're going to see the most accidents happen. Although I could be wrong, and somebody could go into the Forestall Stadium, I don't know, upside down. Anything's possible these days with Formula East cars.
A lot possible with these Formula E cars. I think one of the big things when it comes to Formula E and this race, we got to watch every lap, every corner. I think it looks potential for some sort of action. From the final corners you mentioned, the cars are just right on the ragged edge. The stadium section, where right on the inside line you have that attack zone. I could see somebody exit the attack zone and then making contact with the driver trying to get around him. A lot to follow in this race. And qualifying today, as Amber alluded, was very intense. Group A, Lauderer, Montara, Verne, and Van Dorn made it out of Group A. Lauderer looked good all day long, and we know he is one of the hardest to race against. Oliver Askew was in that group, the American driver for Andretti Autosports. He got sixth fastest. Looked like he was going to get in that top four, but just missed out. And Group B, we saw a near shocker as Nick de Vries was only the fourth fastest. There were still cars out there on the track. A lot of people wondering, will he even advance to the next round? And thankfully he did. Nobody was able to post the fastest lap. So along with de Vries, Fringe, DaCosta, and Wehrlein, the fastest in Group B, they all advanced. And both Jaguars failed to make it into the duels. This also includes Jake Dennis from Andretti Autosport, didn't make it out. And to me, it seemed towards the end of that group qualifying stage, the times just did not improve. Ed, did the weather on the track made it to where the times were just no longer improving? Or was there something else where it just seemed like after de Vries' lap, nobody could post anything faster?
It's a bit of an odd one. I think certainly the track was warming up all day, because in free practice one it was something like 13 degrees, and I think it was expected to climb, and I believe, I didn't check, but I think it did climb up to at least 21 or 22 degrees or something like that by the time qualifying started. So yeah, certainly the second runs weren't as good in Group B, and I think maybe it's just a case of the drivers couldn't quite hook it up, because it certainly seemed like Alexander Sims was another one that also missed out on getting in, and it certainly felt like just one where de Vries was the only one, I think, who was able to just about sneak in. And we saw Nick Cassidy actually trying to go before everyone else and ended up missing out as a result, in terms of he did his final qualifying lap in the Group B, I guess, just early when the track wasn't quite as rubbered in as it was for everyone else. And I think maybe being out of sequence like that hurt his chance, because I think he could have got in with Robin Frijns into those sorts of semi-final, quarter-final sort of stages, even though Robin Frijns also as well got sort of knocked out by one that I think he got knocked out by Verne, if I remember correctly. But it is a bit complicated trying to reflect all the individual duels. But me complaining about it when I was the big defender of the format, I shouldn't be like that. But anyway, yeah. So I'm not sure exactly. I think it was different for all the drivers. Certainly worrying for the likes of Degrassi, who I expected to be a lot further up in Group A, and for the Jaguars, I think both of them are a bit disappointed to be sort of a bit mired in the mid pack, and they'll be looking to gain places. Mitch Evans, of course, won last time we were here in Mexico. I expect him to be on a bit of a charge.
Great news. The pre-show is done. And for everyone who's going to tune in for that watch along, it's 36 minutes. Ed, you kept me talking a lot in the qualifying, I think. It's 5 minutes over. Yeah, I think as well, de Vries in that second group of qualifying, he went into P4. Everyone behind that just sort of dropped back. I mean, yes, Wehrlein, DaCosta, and Frijns jumbled up the positions a little bit in the top, but it was an unusual one. As you say, the track temperature was different. I mean, free practice one was at, if I get my map out here, because I've got my little data. Free practice one this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. Track temperature was very, very low. It's very, very cold as well, actually, surprisingly, from what I've learned at the circuit. As you say, Ed, it's been warming up all day. Current track temperature is at 32 degrees. Air temperature at 21. It's been about 21 since qualifying started earlier on as well. The cars are just making their way to the grid now, ready as well. They're just doing a couple of things I can see, because the driver trackers are just flipping up and down up in the box. But I think as well, watch out as well in the race in terms of drivers getting away at the front, because the track temperatures remaining the same. We're not going to see tyre wear be such a big thing. I think you touched on the edge during the qualifying commentary, was that the tyres were being changed over. They didn't really need to be. But with the drivers locking up a lot more as well, they're going to be very resilient and know that they're going to have flat spots on their tires as well. So they're going to be nursing those tires for 45 laps. But I don't think we should see that big of an issue going forward as well. Track temperatures remaining constant. We're not going to see much blistering. And with it being a high altitude circuit as well, 2,400 meters above sea level as well, the air is quite thin. It doesn't affect, like it does in Formula One, where it affects the engine to getting hotter and hotter. The battery stays to say the same temperature as well. So it should be quite an interesting race.
Quite an interesting race, and you bring up a good point with that thinner air. It's not going to be the same impact with a combustion engine. So, overall, I think this is going to be a very exciting race, and the duels, boy, were they really exciting. We saw both the Cheetahs, two Mercedes, and both Porsches advance in the duels. But Mortara, he gave everyone a big run because at the end, one of the big things in his career, he's never had started on pole. And in the finals, he was sliding sideways towards that inside wall across the finish line, trying to snatch the pole, but was just unable to do it. Thankfully, he kept it off the pole, but it was Pascal Wehrlein taking another pole, and surprisingly, he is still trying to earn his first win. Joshua, this new format, it's only 3 races old, but I feel this was the best so far we've seen in delivering great action. Do you agree this is the best qualifying effort so far, and especially that duel between Mortara and Wehrlein?
I certainly think this is definitely one of the best duels we've seen of the format so far. I mean, Diriyah, as I said, it was a bit messy. The times all over a bit. It wasn't top notch, especially race 1. That suffered. Race 2 was great. Thousandths of a second between them on the grid. This one here has certainly ramped up the dramatic. We had the 2 DS2 Cheetahs, as you said, versing each other as well. They can rest assured that there's only 11 thousandths of a second between their 2 drivers, so they're pretty much bang on straight away. Mercedes, I think, are going to worry about this format now going forward because they were so strong in Diriyah. They've had such a bad weekend here. I mean, as we say, De Vries starts 6th, Van Dorn starts 8th. That's the 3rd and 4th row of the grid. But Mortara, with the same engines up there, running second on honours on the grid as well. It's confusing. Adam says as well, can Antonio Da Costa rebound and get points today? Well, Da Costa, I think, was my biggest shock. He's down in, 5th place on the grid. Starting as well. I was expecting him very much in the top, especially after practice. I thought he'd get through to the final. So he's going to have to really bounce back to get into the top 10. I think both DS2 Cheetahs will score points today. There's a very strong chance because we've got Vern 4th, Da Costa 5th. That is entirely possible. I would personally keep an eye out for Van Dorn and De Vries to come through because I know this circuit hasn't suited them in terms of one-on-one lap times, as we saw, but the race is a completely different story. We know they've got the race pace. Also, throughout, Lucas Di Grassi, he's my pick-a-winner this week, and I was very adamant for him going there as well. He's 14th on the grid. He hasn't got Mortara to back him up like they played that game with each other back in Diriyah. So Di Grassi is going to have to fight back. But if anybody can, he can. He's won 3 times in Mexico, once in Puebla, twice at the circuit as well, at the Autodromo Hermano Rodriguez. But that's a mouthful, isn't it? I know how you feel now, Ed. Wehrlein, as you say, chasing his first win. He has won twice in Mexico. Both of them got taken away from him. He crossed the line first, ran out of energy, gave it to Di Grassi in season 5. Last year in season 7, he won in Puebla, dominated everything, but got disqualified because the tire codes were wrong. I mean, you can't look away, can you? So I don't know. For all I know, Porsche's going to have, I don't know, the belt strap was wrong, or your front left tire nut is just a little bit out of sync. I'm sure the FIA will find something to disqualify him if he wins this time. If it happens a third time, though, I think he'll start missing purposely the Mexico races. I would.
I think, Josh, you may have noticed that there's a new guy running Porsche at the moment. So I imagine the people responsible for the not that I'm throwing any kind of shade at Emil Lindsay, I thought did a lovely job and has left sort of for personal reasons. But there's a new guy whose name I can't remember can't remember what it is or how to pronounce it yet, but he's apparently a lot of people are saying he's responsible for Porsche's upturn in form this weekend. I think they're already a very good team. I think they just needed to. They are the youngest team, so they obviously a bit of growing pains there. But anyway, the question I'm supposed to answer at this point is about the qualifying format. I didn't watch the first race. This is the first time I've seen the qualifying format in action ever. And I was impressed. We've got one of our guys, Jack Pickering, who I believe is on site at the Formula E race today in Mexico. So hopefully we'll be able to get some interesting insight from him. Amber J is also saying, I'm surprised Lucas wasn't faster. I was surprised too. I think it was a little bit of a case of where he just didn't quite get the lap together, like a lot of drivers, funnily enough, in that qualifying session. And so I know there are a lot of things that people complained about in terms of after Saudi Arabia, which was the gap between sessions being a bit long. And I didn't feel that was so bad. I think apparently Josh was saying they shortened a little bit some of the session time. The groups were a little bit long, so long that the drivers... I'm a little bit uncertain about this changing tyres in the middle of the group stage because I feel like the drivers shouldn't have fresh tyres, but because I feel the mentality, it sort of changes the mentality. And I feel like Formula E is such an energy conservation championship, and it was sort of the same with tyre management as well. The idea that Michelin built these tyres that can do almost a whole season without having to change them, and that was sort of a big showcase of their product. And perhaps Hankook, who are building the tyres for Gen 3, they want something different, and this is a sort of trial of that before Season 9 when Hankook come in. But I kind of like that Michelin did that. That it was sort of they were emphasising the kind of road relevancy of their tyres, even though there are a lot of calls for why don't we just run slicks. The demonstration, I thought there were no. There's certainly in the race there aren't any unless you get a puncture, I guess. But which in case you sort of have to, otherwise you can't really continue. But yeah, overall, my thoughts on the qualified format. The dual format works really well. Me and Josh, it was like he would pick a car, I would pick a car, and we just see which one wins.
It's why the edit is 36 minutes long for the qualifying bits.
I did jabber on a bit, didn't I?
No, we both did.
Yeah, just like I'm jabbering on now. But anyway, I enjoyed it.
I don't like that, Ed.
Yeah, I certainly feel like it's an improvement on some of the. I think the problem with the previous format was not so much that it was a lottery, but the focus. You weren't really sure where the focus was, and the best bit of it was Super Pole, where one car would come out one after the other, and it would that was going to decide the final 5 or 6 places on the grid, and that was the really best part of that format. And what we have now is sort of a kind of 2 Super Poles going on at the same time in the form of these duels that you sort of. There's a little bit of element of where the driver might make a mistake and that gets missed, and you end up seeing that later. But I think they do a reasonably good job with the TV direction of keeping you on your toes. And Mortara certainly spinning at the end was a huge dramatic moment because I thought he had that up until he sort of got a little bit offline. The first guy was trying to do a big ring of death around the outside of the Peraltada, and eventually had like 3 or 4 goes at trying to let go on him. In the final one, he just couldn't save it in time. And I don't think anyone could have at that point because it was already going. It was just a matter of when, really. But Verline certainly was extremely impressive. We all thought Lotterer was going to get it, but he just got beaten by Vern, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, Vern. Yeah. And Vern and DaCosta was another great duel as well. Those two going against each other, with DaCosta just missing out due to a little mistake, I think he admitted. So
sorry, it's my own fault. It was Mortara.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
it's
this new format duel.
Everyone versus the problem is everyone versus everyone. So you see how you're going to get mixed up.
It makes sense when I write it, but it doesn't when I read it back.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that makes sense when you're going through it, and talking about it afterwards is a little bit mixed up because what order did these duels happen in? But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, one criticism I have got with 3 races in now, and we've had 3 attempts at direction of the TV cameras. In race 1, they sort of delayed the 2 side by side so that we got it, and that didn't feel like organic to me because my timing screen showed me he was on pole position before the TV pictures did. So that didn't work out. Race 2, they tried this format where they would follow the first driver for the first half of lap, then cut back to the second half. Hasn't really worked because the driver, again, crosses the line and we're waiting on the second one to see who's on pole. And here today, they sort of cut between the 2, which was okay. But as Ed said, missing it. Yeah. Personally, I would have the split screen with the 2 onboard cameras but live. So we know that one driver's ahead, and then we'll cut to the other one as he crosses the line. That way we get to see both laps at both different parts. It just makes more sense. It's easier for everyone to follow. And it's one of the bit that's really getting to me with Aurora Media, that they're sort of not capturing. You've got these split screen onboards. Just put them out live. Let us see it. We don't need this delayed function because we can wait 15 seconds to see the second car come through. It is the one bit that's annoying me from a commentator's
one thing
point of
I
view.
would love, just to end this section, is I would love to see the driver's eye during the
Yes.
because we got to see it earlier in practice, but we didn't get to see it during the duels in qualifying. I believe Lotter had it on, and there was someone else who had it as well. Was it Degrassi? There was certainly a couple of drivers.
Degrassi.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remembered correctly for change. But certainly, I would have loved to. Degrassi didn't make it into the duel, so I guess that's why we didn't see it. But I think if you had a split screen of the driver's eye, you got a great view of the drivers like going about their process as they drive. I guess the process of driving, would usually just called driving. But even with the sort of blurred out details on the steering wheel, I think that would be really unique and really serve the format quite well. And yeah, I think Amber JJ is a dual screen for the duels.
Makes more
sense. It was like playing split screen on those old Formula One games.
Yeah, they want to cash in on that game market that they do. Then that's the perfect one to do.
And Adam agrees with Amber as well.
Yes,
so.
We've started a trend here, Joe.
Yeah, we need to start petition to get the
broadcast.
broadcast.
Because with the dual screens, you can see both drivers what they're doing. I mean, I think they got the graphic layouts perfect, where you can see as the gap closes in. I love how they put the drivers' intros with the two drivers versus in the middle. It's like, this is just entertaining. It's, for the fans out there, especially when they were seeing Matara coming around the corner, I think that had to be something else to see him sideways. And that final corner, looks like everyone's right on the edge of control. Ed, can the teams really do anything with the handling of the car for that last corner without compromising the rest of the track? Because this track, it does demand a lot of speed, but you can't give up one corner and sacrifice speed. Is there anything the teams could do?
Well, I guess you've got the two little technical sections, like you said, like Josh was talking about earlier, the little handle of the butcher's knife that he didn't like, which was turn sort of 3 through to about 6 or 7. And then, of course, there's the Ferrosol, which is turn 9 through to turn 12, if I remember correctly. And the Peraltada, by far the fastest corner on the track, a unique challenge. It's not even Formula One gets to use the full Peraltada. They sort of have the Nigel Mansell named entry from the Ferrosol because they sort of enter and exit. They enter the stadium at the same point, but they exit at a slightly different point. Whereas Formula E sort of rejoins the original Grand Prix circuit that was used in the early 90s, last used in the early 90s before they got rid of the Peraltada essentially, or the full Peraltada. But yeah, it's certainly. We even had a similar sort of corner at Puebla last year. The final corner there was also sort of banked and a little bit kind of cambered. With the Peraltada, it's a case of there's certainly things they can do with the toe and with the suspension to make sure it handles bit more consistently. It's a bit more predictable. But the priority is getting speed on those straights and also making sure that you're not losing too much time in those sort of technical sections. It reminds me a little bit of Formula E's version of the old Hockenheim ring that used to go off into the sort of sprawling forest until Hermann Tilke had his own version in 2002 that we've used ever since. And it's a good circuit, but not quite the it's much more technical than it used to be when it was just high speed and several chicanes. The old Hockenheim ring from 2001, I mean.
I mean, just
Josh, I can hear you.
Yeah.
You want to?
I know, and I want to jump in on that because
it's
I
your
love
turn.
Hockenheim.
Here you go.
I would really love it because it's still technically possible if we can still, after turn 1, blast off down towards the forest section, swing back around on the 2 long straightaways, and the hairpin down at turn 8, just after the parabolica at Hockenheim, the very tight little hairpin where we see all those big accidents, that you can come back off that straight, and then you've still got the new swinging stadium section around the Mercedes grandstand, and then it's still there. You can still do an endurance version of the circuit. And personally, if you sped off into the woods now with these F1 cars, I think the lap times would roundabout be the same. There might only be like a 10-second difference between them. So I don't know why they haven't just sort of gone for it and reclaimed that circuit. I mean, I'd personally love it. It was one of my favorite races in the early 2000s. And as you said, they wrecked it in 2002. And for me, it lost a bit of its soul that day.
Okay. Well, that's all very interesting, Josh, but it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the
just
Mexico City E-Prix in order drama Manos Rodriguez.
Well, I can go on the fact as well that our wonderful Herman Tilke ruined this circuit as well in many respects. He changed the S's the wrong way around.
Well, he had nothing to do with the Formula E one. So.
No, he didn't.
That's probably why we get to use the full
I must say, the person who designed the Formula E circuit, I'd like to take out for many, many beers because he gave us the full peltada, and I love the peltada.
Well, that sounds like the opposite of the John Cullen comment about the person who designed this track should be taken into a dark room and beaten.
I love that comment as well. I'm sure we've all seen it on YouTube. That is a great comment.
Okay. But anyway, so and to summarize my answer, because I think I've forgotten what I said. There are things you can do, but the priority is probably the rest of the track and the drivers. Like Mortara, you just got to try and hold on as best you can. And in the race, I imagine they'll be taking slightly less risks because of the energy management as well, especially on the entry to the peloton. But on the exit, of course, they'll be going full throttle. So,
yeah, speed I think is the big one. The drivers are really going to be on the edge on that corner, and of course, Pascal Wehrlein. We all know he's been on the edge of getting that win here. Just something seems to go wrong. Just amazing looking at his numbers in his career here in Formula E. The number of poles, podiums, considering the craziness of Formula E, especially when we had the prior group qualifying. He always seems to be towards the front. Do you believe today is his day? And is he overdue for a win?
I'm so sorry. My entire computer's just frozen up there. I can't see you at the moment. Oh, there I am. Don't know what happened there. But yes, to answer your question, Pascal Wehrlein, is he overdue a win? Yes, he's absolutely overdue a win. I think he was very much mishandled in Formula One as well. He's a very quick driver. He should have been in a quick team as well. Got stuck at Sauber for a long time as well. He's got the opportunity here in Formula E, an official world championship now as well. He's so close to it. He keeps having it taken away. He was dominant in Puebla last year, and then the tire rule got him kicked out as well as Lotterer. So I think he's going to be switched on in his brain. He's got the pole position. He's going to head towards turn one, keep Mortara behind him, and maybe even let Lotterer fight with Mortara a little bit, because Mortara never gets off the line quite well. He's never good at the starts, whereas Wehrlein is. So I'm thinking, today's the day Wehrlein might just take the win. But I'm sticking with Lucas de Grassi for my pick a winner, because I've seen him come back from 16th on the grid here at this circuit to win. And he starts 14th here today. So anything's possible in 45 minutes, plus one lap, and plus any overtime Scott Elkin decides to add on.
I absolutely agree with Josh about Pascal Wehrlein. I think he's a wonderful driver. He's proved it in DTM, where he was champion, of course, before he got his break in Formula One that didn't quite work out as he'd hoped he would. Sort of ended up leaving the Mercedes program to join first Mahindra and now Porsche, another big German manufacturer. And he's sort of their leading light at the moment. Obviously, Lotterer, loads of experience at Le Mans, an incredibly quick driver, but also someone who hasn't won a Formula E race yet and has come close on a couple of times doing so. But Wehrlein, obviously, he's had so much bad luck beyond his control, really, especially Puebla last year in both races, actually, where he lost a win and then lost a podium. But I think today could be when he does it. Porsche certainly learned from last time they were here on pole, when it basically all went wrong for Andre Lotterer. And it was interesting, like I was saying, Lotterer was setting the pace in practice in the early phases of qualifying. Him and Wehrlein topped both groups, I think. And then the moment Lotterer made a mistake, Wehrlein was there to sort of bring home the bacon and take advantage, and as it were, to use a couple of strange meat-based expressions. But I've always been a big fan of Pascal Wehrlein. I feel like the reason he gets a bit unfairly maligned is because he's not a very show-offy kind of character. He's sort of very focused, likes to get on, do the job. He can be a little bit emotional when it's not going his way. I mean, who isn't? I mean, you should hear some of my commentary when the camera gets stuck and I can't change it into the sim racing. But Pascal, I think I did say during Berlin, and Josh Play saying Mortara going across the line be like, so yeah, I imagine Mortara want to be doing a bit less of that come the race. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Pascal Wehrlein. One of many drivers in the Formula Field I'm a big fan of. I would love to see him do it. Was there any other question in this section? Was it just about Wehrlein? I've forgotten.
Let's talk about Wehrlein, but we're going to get to.
Well, there we go. I think I've filled enough time. Then we can probably move on to the next bit.
Yeah, because we're going to talk next about the person starting next to Wehrlein. Of course, that is the points leader, Eduardo Mortara. Now, Mortara, we know he done pretty good last year. Was in contention for the championship. This year, he won the second race, comes in with the points lead, and overall, qualifying with what he did, getting into the final round, he knew he was going to be in the front row. He'll be starting second, and of course, we're all talking about him sliding across the finish line sideways. Meanwhile, second place in the point, the defending champion, Nick de Vries, he was out in round one, so he has a little further way to go. And Mortara, he only has one vehicle ahead of him at the start, and overall, I got to say, Mortara, the performance he's put in, when you look at his rocket car, especially from the front, it sort of reminds me of another champion that had a black car with a little bit of red on the front. Starting with you, Edward, Mortara, with this race, how does he approach it? And especially knowing he only has one car ahead of him, the championship rivals are all behind him.
Well, it's still early days. I think Mortara will approach it much the same as he would any other race, which is, I want to win this thing. And so he'll do everything possible to put himself in that position. We saw Venturi worked really well in the second race. Well, I didn't see, you guys probably saw it, in the second race in Saudi Arabia when Lucas di Grassi was sort of the rear gunner for Mortara, allowed him to get ahead of de Vries and basically cause trouble for Mercedes. And now it's a very different scenario. Mortara sort of on his own. He's got the two Porsches sandwiching him on the grid. So obviously the big problem for him is going to be trying to make sure that Porsche don't box him in, because because Wehrlein or Lotto could use one another, sort of delay Mortara, and especially with attack mode on this circuit, it's going to be really effective when you go for it. So I think Mortara he's going to be up against it certainly. But I don't think he'll be thinking, oh, I can just stay up here in second and third and bank some points. He'll be thinking, I need to win, because he already lost 3 points today. I think pole was really there for the taking, and the rear, he made the mistake at the peloton, and the rear just let go. So he don't want to sacrifice any more points if he can help it. So I think Edo Mortara is going to be full attack in the Mexico City E-Prix.
I concur. I completely concur, because I think Mortara has been gifted the best birthday Christmas present he could ever ask for, is the fact that de Vries has had a terrible qualifying session. Down in 6th place on the grid. He's only got one car ahead of him, as you said as well, Joe. But the inside line here is a dangerous one to go for. As I talked about earlier on, the very straight run at the pit exit into the very tight right-hander as well. Opportunity to sort of just T-bone the side of the car ahead of you and get spun around, damage your wing, even break a suspension. I mean, we saw how violent an accident you can have in a Gen 2 car here in Mexico back when Piquet flying over the top of Jean-Eric Verne. And that was a misunderstanding in the braking zone as well. So the start is going to be entertaining. I'm going to keep an eye out for Mortara throughout this race as well. But if he doesn't at least get second today, it's going to be very, very disappointing. I think he'll beat himself up about that as well. He needs to maximize the points, because the Mercedes are going to be quite quick. We're in for a very entertaining Grand Prix where all of the cars... E-Prix, whatever. All the cars are separated perfectly. We've got de Grassi, who was fast here at the circuit, fast in Diriyah. He's starting further back as well. We've got Buemi, who's sort of been this way and that way all weekend. He topped free practice 1 for 10 minutes. Now he's dropped right back to 18th. Sam Bird as well. Where's he been this weekend? We've barely mentioned him. So we've got cars very much split out. Watch out as well, actually. Oliver Askew 12th on the grid. He could be a surprise. He likes this circuit. He's been saying as well in the press briefings that have been going on between the race and in between qualifying and the race. So I think he's in for something if he's found a groove on this circuit, and if he's found finally a groove with that car in the Andretti. So yeah, it's going to be really, as you would, as Adam would say, pick a winner. You can't. There's so much going on everywhere. I think as well, looking at it, Lotto and Da Costa as well could all be up there. This is what we love about Formula E. You just don't know who's going to win the race. We can think about it. You can pick a winner, but at the end of the day, it's the roll of the dice, the click of the fingers. Anything can happen.
Anything can happen in this race. We talked about how Lucas Di Grassi has won from further back, gotten the win. Big surprise, and you mentioned this, Sam Bird and Jaguar. They failed to make it to the duels. Bird has a win streak of each season. He wants to keep that intact, and he's only going to have 45 minutes plus one lap and maybe a little extra time. How shocked were you to see both Jaguars fail to make the duels?
Who's going first? Do you want to go ahead?
You are,
me?
Josh.
Oh, me. I am.
It's you on
Lovely.
the script, so.
I haven't got that. It's not up. I couldn't load it. So, yeah. So I think as well, this could be quite interesting with Bird as well, being so far down. He has been struggling. He was quite quick in race 1 in Diriyah, and I thought, oh, he might get a podium. Race 2, he sort of slipped away. This weekend, he's been nowhere. I'm very worried that as the only driver who has won a race in every single season, he might actually lose it. And that's a disappointment because Jaguar was strong last year. They were coming up quite quick. I mean, look at Mitch Evans as well. He was right up there with the title hopes as well. He's now 11th. Bird starts 17th on the grid. It's all a bit confusing. I'm thinking, however, by the time we get to Rome, they've got a month off after this race as well. We don't race in March, and it's a double header in Rome. I expect Sam Bird will win race 2 at Rome. That's what I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was certainly a little bit surprising, although I guess it would be worrying because Jaguar only got 13 points out of the 2 races in Saudi Arabia. They'll certainly be looking to add to the score today. I don't think qualifying outside the top 10 is the end of the world. Like you say, Mitch Evans, 11th, and he's personally my pick a winner, mainly because he won 2 years ago, in Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez really dominantly. So that's the reason I picked him. But I certainly think Jaguar will, like you say, Josh, I think they'll regroup. They've got the resources to certainly put into the software to optimize what they've got. They've got 2 brilliant drivers. So you can't really lay the fault at their door, particularly, although, everyone has a bad day now and again. But certainly, I think it's slightly worrying for Jaguar, but we'll have to see how the race goes.
And we're talking about slightly worrying for Jaguar. Nissan, they looked better in pace when it came to the practice sessions, but qualifying, it's like they just didn't show up with the speed. Buemi, pointless still. When it looks at Nissan, they don't seem to be there. No. We're talking about how Jaguar has the capacity to come back. When it comes to Nissan, do you think, especially since Buemi's pointless right now, they have to come back and start reevaluating what's going on? Are they at that stage where it's like, okay, let's reevaluate what's going on? Why are we not there yet? Starting with you, Ed.
Well, I think Nissan sort of halfway through last year, they introduced a new car, which is the car they're using this at the moment in this season. And it felt like they never quite got on top of it, but figured out how to get the best out of it anyway. And I'm sort of wondering that might have been part of the reason why Oliver Rowland was convinced to go from Nissan to Mahindra in the first place. Part of it may also have been the fact that Sebastian Boehm has been paid significantly more than him. Well, not significantly more, just a little bit, but enough to persuade Rowland to go up for a better payday at Mahindra, which, I mean, it's winners, right? But yeah, certainly Nissan were not expecting to do particularly well this season because at the end of last season they saw they're a little bit inconsistent, especially Buemi has he did show some better pace in practice. Like we were saying, he was in the top 4, I believe, in both practice sessions. But unfortunately, that didn't materialize into qualifying. In the group stage, he just couldn't get it together. And Gunther, though, had a slightly better run, just missed out, actually, on getting into any of the duels. So Maximilian Gunther, the young talent, the guy who at BMW, when they were struggling last season where Andretti, he was able to sneak a win, literally sneaking a win from nowhere in New York City. when Vern and Cassidy sort of held each other up, and Gunther, one of those bright young talents who is always able to pull something out from somewhere. I certainly think he's going to continue scoring points for Nissan, even if Buemi can't quite recover. But certainly Nissan will be hoping Gen 3, which I assume is where most of their resources is going to be a lot better for them. So I think Nissan are probably thinking about the future rather than where they are at present. But Maximilian Gunther, of course, is going to give it everything, and we'll see how he gets on in the race.
Yeah, you've made me doubt myself now, Ed, as well, about have I called in Diriyah Gunther back at Nissan? I'm going to have
They're
to
both really big red cars, so I don't blame you.
Well, to be fair, you look at the Formula E field, there's a livery that's similar. You can't really tell. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, I think I said this back in Saudi, didn't I, about the fact that I think we're going to see Sebastian Buemi sort of lean more towards his World Endurance Championship campaign this year rather than Formula E. It seems to be another off-season for them as well. I think you bang on, Ed. They've focused too much on the Gen 3 car for next season because it was supposed to be here this year, but it got delayed due to COVID. So I think that's not helping. I think he's getting incredibly frustrated as well. I was quite happy, as I'm sure everybody was, in free practice one when he was top of the timing sheets for so long, and then he just fell back down again. Nissan haven't really approached this weekend well. It comes actually at a circuit where they had their most embarrassing moment when both the cars a couple of years ago failed to finish. And Buemi was very angry with them on the radio, wasn't he? He was saying, for the first time in 5 years, this has happened. This never happens. So, yeah, I don't think he's going too much into, I think Formula E is my top priority, which is sad coming from the Season 2 champion. Josh says as well, yeah, the elephant circuit. Yep. Actually, it is an elephant circuit, isn't it? Oh, my God, I've just realised that. From one angle, it looks like a butcher's knife. From another, it looks like an elephant. I think even Megan said at some point, if you turn it upside down, it looks like a teapot.
Well, don't give yourself a neck injury, Josh.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll take it off for a second, and I'll from this angle. Look, she told me yesterday it looks like a teapot, and I can sort of see what she's on about. From that angle, it's a teapot. From that angle, it's a butcher's knife, and from the normal angle, it's an elephant circuit. So I can see what they're on about there.
This is exactly the technical insight and analysis you were brought on here to do, Josh.
Yeah, just fantastic technical analysis. But yeah, to wrap up that as well, I think that is a teapot, yeah. Actually, I should have said that's a teapot, shouldn't I? Yeah, I think Nissan are going to sort of struggle to keep Buemi focused this year, as much as we're struggling to keep focused on
Yes, I was just about to say, Josh, he's not the only one.
With this teapot of a circuit, I wonder if we're going to get some hot tempers as the temper starts to boil over. So it's going to be something really exciting. And Nissan E-Dams, as I mentioned, now that we clarified Max Gunther, not overall, they are pointless. The other pointless team we have right now so far is, of course, Dragon Penske Autosport. They're, of course, towards the back with Neo 333 in the grid. Now, last year, with the qualifying format, they might be looking midfield, maybe a surprise front row, score some points. This year, it seems the qualifying has made it where it's a lot less random. If you're fast, you're going to be for sure in the duels. We see the gap between the top running teams, like the bigger teams, grow, especially with the back teams. So we're losing that opportunity of a qualifying format where they're going to be potentially playing spoiler. Josh, do you see that concern?
Yeah, I've voiced this back in when we first had it in Diriyah as well. It's like you're constantly going to reward the drivers who are fast throughout the season with the super poles, and the dual section, and then going into semi-finals and final. And I'm very, very worried that the drivers further back are going to not have the opportunity to get up there as much. It's like Antonio Giovinazzi is a fast driver. I've seen it in Formula E. You've seen it in Formula E as well. And I'm feeling sorry for him so much. This is only his second weekend, his third race, and he's down 19th on the grid. Soja City Camera has been there longer, and he's 20th on the grid. So I think Giovinazzi can take some comfort from that. He's faster than his teammate. But the Dragon Penske, it's very much becoming with Neo 333 the tail enders of the field. If they were F1 teams, I'd be calling them Minardi and Jordan. They're right at the back. They're always getting in the way as well. And they need major overhauls. I mean, do you remember when I think it was Neo, wasn't it? It locked out the front row of the grid a couple of years ago. We all thought, oh my God, Neo are quick. And then they fell out after the next race in Punta del Este, I think a couple of years ago, because we went back there, didn't we? After Hong Kong one year. But it's all a mess. It's all a complete mess. And I'm really sorry for the Dragon Penske's lot. I mean, we've seen it happen. Venturi was slow for a couple of years, and now they're right at the front. Get a good powertrain in the back of that Penske, and they'll be right up there. They need a Mercedes power unit.
Yeah, certainly. Dragon Penske have been rumored to be one of the teams, customer teams, looking for a bigger manufacturer to supply them in Gen 3. We haven't heard, who it might be, but we know they're certainly on the market and interested. Neo 333, a slightly different situation. They're committed to making their own powertrain for Gen 3. So I actually feel that Neo 333 are a bit more secure because they have been making a little bit of progress, even if they're locking out the back row of the grid today. But they certainly have been on song with Dragon Penske Autosport and able to score points now and again if they get everything right. I think there's this idea of, if you're in a car at the back of Formula E, and it's kind of the same in any series, that people say, they've got no chance of doing anything, you may as well just give up, which I think is always a bad attitude. I think even if you're at the back, you can still prove how good a driver you are. And we've seen Dan Ticktum, Antonio Giovinazzi, maybe it's not the best cars to make your debut in, but you can still have a good time, get to grips with Formula E and put yourself in the shop window to show what you can do. And you never know, Neo 333 might be a much more competitive prospect coming to Gen 3. Dragon might partner with, say, like you say, a Mercedes or a DS. The Stellantis group's been making moves in Formula E with Maserati as well. Mahindra aren't supplying anyone right now. Maybe they might be open to a deal. Or Porsche, if they're in the same boat as well. I think Porsche have been and Nissan have been great. I think actually there was the rumor I heard that Nissan were in talks with Dragon potentially, but I wasn't sure how serious that was. But we'll have to see. For this season, certainly it's survival and damage limitation between the two. But like you say, Joe, there's always a chance of safety cars, of cars up ahead dropping out, and that is going to be where, if you're in a Neo 333 or a Dragon Penske Autosport car, that's when you're going to need to be on your A game, because when the points are up for grabs, they won't be up for grabs for long. So you've got to take the opportunity while it's there. And certainly, while we may be disappointed for those drivers and wish they're in better cars, there's certainly a lot to fight for, even at the back of the field.
Can I just top in for a sec, Joe? Did you call Dan Ticktum a good driver? I'm sure that was accidental. I heard that was
quick
accidental.
Driver.
Yeah, I'll take quick. He's my own opinion there.
I'm going to hold my tongue here and not say anything either way.
There's a reason he's got a nickname. There's a reason.
Well, that's because people are cruel and don't accept when people have served their punishment and apologized. They've got to keep punishing them on social media to feel superior, I guess.
Silverstone 2019. 18.
Big thing with Ticktum, he could try to do the talking on the racetrack, change opinion. Speaking about changing opinion and do the talk on the racetrack, we got to talk about, as Adam would say, it's time for pick a winner. A 7-way tie for the lead. Suarez fan correctly guessed Joey Logano for the Busch Light Clash at the LA Coliseum. And for everyone tuning in, try to get on the leaderboard. Comment in the chat room, who do you think is going to win the Formula E race? And of course, since we are talking Formula E, we do have the Wheel of Destiny near available in case anybody wants to use it. I use it the first one, spinning, so automatically. But first race, I used it. I got the freeze right. Second race, Ed, you didn't use it, but you got Martoro right. Josh, since you're pointless, do you wish to use the wheel, or do you already have a pick that you're going to continue sticking with?
I really want to spin the wheel, but I've got to stick with Degrassi because I tweeted it. I'll stick with Degrassi. I'll tell you what, though, you can spin on behalf of Megan, who doesn't have a pick a winner. and she doesn't know. So spit on for Megan,
Okay,
and
let's give
she'll
it
see
a
what she
spin
is.
for Megan. So in case the person that wins the race from the spin, there it goes. It's 20 Megan Burch's pick.
Oh.
To freeze. So
Megan, I know you're watching. You've got to freeze. That is a good bet.
Okay, well, he's certainly quick, but he's not got the greatest of group positions. But we'll have to see how that pans out.
P6.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
let's see, Ed, what are you gonna do for pick a winner?
I think I'm going to do the same as Josh. I'm going to stick with Mitch Evans, who won last year. Not I keep saying that. We were Pueblo last year. In 2020, he won at Austremo Hermanos Rodriguez. And he's always gone really well at Mexico City. I just think down 11th, I don't think it's over for him. It would be quite the story if he's able to win it. But I sort of, as much as I might be tempted to change, like Josh, I think I'm going to stick with my gut and go with Mitch Evans rather than go for necessarily the more attractive option, which would be, say, Mortara or one of the Porsche drivers.
Now for me, I'm gonna go with Mortara. He's gonna make it 2 in a row for him, extend that point lead. I think a lot of people are gonna start talking about him being the favorite for the championship. And yeah, I'm not gonna touch a wheel, but if anybody in the chat room needs a wheel for their pick, let us know shortly. We'll spin it for you. But overall, I feel we've seen Mortara. I think really he is doing a good job with that team up there towards the front. Last year they were towards the front, and now they're going to be, I think, real contenders. And we see Joshua plays. I've got Mortara as well. I had Degrassi, but he changed. I'm pretty sure qualifying did that. And of course,
so Josh made a slightly different decision there.
As always, the way.
And of course, we encourage everyone, hashtag pick a winner on Twitter. You got up until the race begins to finalize your pick. And we definitely thank everyone for tuning in for today's program. Be sure to follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, where we post Pick a Winner every Wednesday. A plethora of social media areas where you can follow us. And of course, you could invest in the Grid Network by joining our Patreon page, where there you can invest monthly every month, or use Buy Me Coffee, a one-time contribution. I know, Ed, you contributed to us a couple of weeks ago. Thank you for that. And of course, want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, Public.com. $5 in free stock if you use the referral code GRIDnet. There's even the option to go into crypto, and soon we're seeing more and more growth with that. And I see we do have some more comments in the chat room. Adam is going with Antonio Felix Sicasa for his pick. And then Josh changed after free practice 2, but did it also after qualifying. I think it's going to be a really fun race. Of course, we encourage everyone, be sure to tune into Joshua's Burch channel. You're going to be doing the watch along, and you're going to be with him, correct?
Yeah, I don't have anywhere else to go.
Yes.
But also on buying a coffee, I'd fully recommend it. If you have the money and are willing to donate it, the Grid Network is an excellent place to donate your money. They don't just use it to buy coffees, they actually use it to improve their content, and they do excellent work. So I would say a worthwhile investment. And look, I'm holding it up right in my right hand.
Although, if you would like to see my brain on caffeine, that is going to be very handy, maybe around Australia, when it will be 5 a.m. my time. So if you want to see what I'm like on coffee, that's something interesting. I'm already buzzing without it. So join me in Australia.
This is a situation where I'm glad I have a coffee machine downstairs in the kitchen.
Yeah, definitely having a coffee machine nearby, especially once we get the 24-hour endurance races. I think that's going to be really key. And definitely we encourage everyone to be sure to like, subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network. We're going to be on the air after the race, approximately 90 minutes after the race, in which Kobe will be here along with Edward and Josh. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a fun race. Thank you, everyone, for watching. For Joshua Burch and Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone, I'm Joe Samaniego. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, Public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.